Hello, everybody, and welcome to Feeds Are for Sheeple, brought to you by Ready App, the mobile platform for connection, collaboration, communication. Today, I've got my friend, my coworker. I like to call you a sidekick, but I don't think we've done enough podcasts yet where we could identify sidekicks.
At what point does somebody become a sidekick?
I don't know.
That's
I think you have to
question.
right.
I'm going to do some research.
Yeah,
on
let's do for a future episode. I have Justin Rudwell here, who's our Ready App's Chief Growth Officer and leading local pontificator. I would probably give you and our CTO, Patrick Goodman, like chief pontification type of...
high scores for pontification.
Yes, labels. Anyway, very glad everybody could tune in today for this brief conversation around something that is near and dear to our hearts here at Ready App. If an inanimate object could be near and dear to our heart, what would it be, you might ask Justin? Justin doesn't know. He just shows up because that's what sidekicks do.
I'm just here, yeah.
They don't prepare. They don't know what we're going to talk about. Today we're going to talk about, ready?
Yeah.
Shelbie.
What's Shelbie, Jonathan?
Oh, that's a great question. So Ready App as a mobile platform that has been inspiring and connecting and getting workforce ready for work around the world for a decade is really built around a single principle of engagement and relevance and relationships. And it's different. There's a reason why Shelbie exists. And let me just, before I go into the importance of relationships and relevance to workforce or mobile engagement, let's talk a little bit about where Shelbie came from, shall we? Because it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
So Shelbie we used to work in coffee shops when Ready App was born. And a lot of the team would get together at the end of a coffee shop bar, and we would sit there for hours, and they did not like that. The coffee shop. We were taking up space. We were taking up bandwidth. We were taking up Wi-Fi.
They all have to plan for that, because everyone does it.
That's right.
Yeah, people camp out in coffee shops.
And then we moved to our very first office on Shelby Street in the middle of the innovation capital of the United States of America, Louisville, Kentucky.
That's right.
Our first official office was on Shelby Street. So it was the beginning. Mm-hmm. It's the core. It was the foundation. And here's the other kind of interesting thing about Shelby that I was near and dear to my heart. Did you know that it was one of the most powerful production engines ever to be put in a consumer car by Ford?
Ford, right? Yeah, the Shelby engine.
That's right, the Shelby engine. So how cool is that? So
it's also a name.
It is.
It's very humanizing.
Yes.
Right.
Well, people like to do that with their tech.
Yeah.
Especially Nerd-a-ramas.
Try to humanize the tech.
That's right. So so Shelby is the heart of the Ready App mobile platform that creates all the relationships and relevance. And so I'll talk a little bit about why that's different than what has been invented in the past. So as microcomputer, PC, client-server architectures took hold in the early 90s, as the world began to evolve around computing power and desktop and corporate productivity, there had to be a way to bring people together around email, right?
Yeah,
as we know. And the early technologies that were available were really meant and completely, there was no mobile devices, by the way, Justin, were completely built for people that had these large desk computers that would sit underneath the desk.
No, I remember.
With a monitor on top. Sometimes they were CRT screens, even before that. So we won't even get into that. That's a whole different topic. But
my older sister had one of the original, the Apple.
I love those.
They kind of like
cool.
The screen about 5x5 or 6x6 inches.
One of my good friends has those on his shelf in his house. Really cool.
As decoration?
As decoration.
Right, okay.
Right. I wish it should turn on, though, which would be really cool. Just leave it there with a bleeping cursor. Tick, 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 tick. But we had to create groups and group structures and organization to communication very early on for desk-oriented workforce, which is where all of the innovations of technology and software really literally have come from. And Microsoft was probably one of the pioneers for corporate IT directories. They built a product called Active Directory, and it was a way to lump together all of these people linearly across an organization, mostly, Justin, by either department or location. And so that's kind of interesting, right? So
Are they still doing it that way?
they still are doing it that
Still
way.
doing
Yeah.
that.
Now there's many advanced forms of Active Directory and how it's evolved over the years to
Right.
include workflow capabilities and all kinds of things. But it is complex.
Yeah.
And for the most part, most people just use straight up group type, structures and organization. And and so that is how groups have been done and really have not changed much for those 30 years, except for in highly complex situations where you have multiple locations or you have people that need to cross communicate to different people overseas or in international offices, et cetera. But the reason that groups work so efficiently and so well in email and in general traditional communication, technology-based communication, is that there's an open architecture, which means anybody, this is what we love and we hate, anybody can talk to anybody within an organization at any time. Think
Yeah.
about it in email. How many companies have you been in, Justin, in your career where somebody has sent out an email to the entire company that probably may not have been appropriate or by accident even?
Oh yeah, I've been the recipient of some of those in my time for sure.
Me too. It's always very funny.
A lot of top down stuff,
Yes.
The Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, kind of speaking to the masses,
And then a reply all after
and then
that.
and then everyone kind of weighing in. Yeah,
Right. But that's just the nature of it. Even today in our current versions of collaboration, connection, communication for desk type workers in Slack or Teams are still very openly architected, structured within these channels and feeds, of course. But
Yeah.
but what Shelbie does and what our approach was from the very beginning of Ready App was to take into consideration that people who worked with their hands, machines, tools, or in front of customers or patients, I don't know if we say that too much in our podcast, but you know what? It does drive the point home.
Right. That's what we do.
They work on mobile, right? They work on their mobile device. It is their primary interface, unless you are a server and then you go to your POS system and you click in your 4-digit server ID, and then you've been locked in, maybe clogged in too. I don't
Hopefully
know.
not.
There's lots of clogging. Locked in or logged into your hour. That's how you check in. That's how you clock in for your shift. Or if you are a person that has a badge that scans by like a Chronos in or out badge, that's your interaction. Or let's say that you are a person that goes up to a computer that sits on a desk somewhere and then you have to fill something in to let people know you're there. That has been the the host of complexity that is and the innovation that has surrounded people who work
Yeah.
in very manual jobs for the rest of their entire career. In those industries we serve specifically. But when you think about mobile, when you think about, let's take I'm going to give one great example and then we have to kind of move on. But it's such a powerful example of what Ready App does at its core and what Shelbie does at
And when you
its
say
core.
mobile, you're saying mobile for work, right?
That's right. That's right. So I use my personal mobile device to interact with my job, my
Yep.
company, my manager, and that's what I say when I say mobile. And let's take a casino. One casino may have 3,000 to 5,000, a large casino in Vegas, in Florida, in Cincinnati, you name it. There are actually, strangely enough, there are more casinos across the country than just Las Vegas. But in those casinos, there are 3,000 to 5,000 employees, and they often have 300 to 400 different job codes
Right.
within those large organizations. And the interesting piece for workforce in those jobs is that the roles, like let's say that I got a job as a lifeguard on the weekends at this really great casino in beautiful downtown Tampa, Florida, which if some people know what's there, there's a beautiful Hard Rock hotel and casino there. And but also I like to bartend and pick up different bartending shifts and or banquet shifts during the week. How do I assign that employee the appropriate group to get communication about their bartending gig, their banquet gig, or their lifeguard gig instead of being in an open feed?
Right, and nothing else. You
That's
don't want them
right.
getting news on,
That's right. Or
a cleaning shift.
That's
because
right.
they're not, going to do that job.
That's right. So we had to come up with a technology that was. I'm looking at my clock here. My gosh, this episode's getting very long. But we had to come up with a technology that allowed the flexibility and the scale to do this across 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, and 20,000 workers with as many as a dozen locations across the United States and do it seamlessly. And there are thousands of groups that exist, and they are often, Justin, nonlinear. So they don't necessarily follow an accounting label, a sales label, a field service label, etc. So that is really kind of the core heart and secret, if you will, of ReadyApp is almost a decade of listening and watching and learning from these organizations about the intricacies of the change that happens on a daily basis within these very disjointed, fragmented, disparate, geographically separated
it's change
teams.
management at the end of the day. I think
That's right.
I feel like socially, Facebook has done this very well. Their algorithm feeds you through their feeds like information that's relevant or what they perceive to be relevant to you based on search history or whatever you've looked at. So you get this content through, and I think their model is very different to ours in that.
Yeah. I think it's a great analogy.
They want to pump as much information your direction on socially as they can. Like they want you on Facebook all the time.
Because they'd like you to buy things, and they sell that space, right?
Then they sell the space, and it's a completely different model. But the algorithm is not dissimilar to what we've built just for work. We know that our employees that use our app need to check in, once a day, a couple times maybe, just to get ready for work. But beyond that, we don't want overuse and too much noise. But we have the same algorithm in the sense that we provide relevant content that's really meaningful to these folks. So I think drawing that distinction between why something like a Facebook group versus a ReadyApp group are so very, very, very different.
And I'd say Facebook groups, GroupMe groups, channels, and feeds. They all have these very things in common, which
feeds are for sheeple.
That's right. Feeds are for sheeple. They're very generalized.
Right.
It actually doesn't get the job done in mobile. And so that's one thing that we've actually been very thoughtful and very careful of at ReadyApp is to figure out how to create relationships and relevance to mobile because of the lack of frequency that these employees
lack of frequency is really important. I mean, you think about what engagement is. It's about not tiring people out with too much noise and too much content that's going to make people want to disengage and switch off.
And yet give them the tools to do their job so they feel like they're a part of the organization.
Empowered and all of that.
I can't. I don't know how much we could more have said about Shelbie. That is the core. That is the heart. That is the foundation of ReadyApp mobile platform that creates broad connection, communication, and collaboration across workforce and corporate ecosystems. Right, Justin? How is that for a mouthful?
That is a mouthful. That's why we call it Shelbie. It's just a lot easier.
That's right. Makes great sense. Thanks everybody for listening. This is Feeds Are for Sheeple, brought to you by ReadyApp, the mobile platform for what I said, collaboration, connection, communication. We do all the C's all the time. Thanks everybody. Talk to you next time.